Welcome back to the loading zone. Today's deep thought, trucks have big wheels.
Does trucking hate truckers? Because we'll trust you with 80,000 pounds and the entire damn economy. But apparently finding you a legal place to park and bathroom access is where America says, whoa, whoa, whoa. That's crazy. Now, no parking, funding fights, regulations changing, and the ground shaking underneath you. And somehow the driver shortage zombie is stumbling around again because apparently you repeat something enough times and eventually the ATA calls it research. We celebrate drivers in speeches and then screw them in the fine print. Today, we're putting that hypocrisy through a brake check. And we're going to do it with some great guests. The road ahead is changing fast, and today's show is no different. From our news to our guest. Up first is Collin Long from OOIDA, here to separate what Washington says it's doing for truckers versus what actually hits their wallet. Then Marilyn, Surber from Conversion Interactive Agency, talking recruiting, retention, and the million-dollar question. Once you've got a good driver, how the hell do you keep them? Politics meets the pavement. Let's go full stop. This is Brake Check. I'm Charles Gracey. And if you're serious about protecting your money and running smarter in today's industry, then like, subscribe, and follow FreightWaves for your top FreightCast trucking news and real trucking talk. You can also go to FreightWaves and register for F3, the Future of Freight Festival. It's Freight Tech's main stage, the leaders you need to hear from, the access and connections you won't get anywhere else, and you can save some money while you're at it. That's right, 20% off the current pricing by using Take 20. That's Take 20. Register today. Now, we're moving fast and we're breaking stuff. And, well, before we get serious, it's time for this new segment. That's right. It's time for the Daily Pileup. And the whole purpose of this is there's a lot of people showing you spreadsheets. There's a lot of people showing you the headlines. I want to focus on social media. I want to talk about what people are talking about. So we're going to talk about like this guy, the 379 guy that's experiencing life in a Freightliner. Check this out.
Is this as low as the seat goes? I can literally see a rock in front of my bumper. Come on, what the? Why is there a tarp strap right here? Oh, never mind, that's why. I'll keep it there. I thought this thing had a drop visor on it. Can't even see it. I guess they forgot to send the drop part of it. It ain't gonna block no sun, that's for sure. Heck, I just found Amelia Earhart up there. She ain't lost, guys. She's right up there. I can see her. Can't reach my snacks over there. There we go. I'm gonna set them on the floor. Now they're melted. What the? Dang, that floor. You can cook an egg on that floor. What is that rattling? I'm gonna need another tarp strap. Amelia, we've been looking for you. Come down.
Now, see, trucking is full of moments like that, but it's also full of moments where people feel like they're driving it till the wheels fall off, and sometimes they do. Hit it. Oh, that's gonna throw a wrench in your day. Can you imagine who was browning their pants worse? The guy in the truck when that happened, or the guy next to the truck wondering which way it's going to go? Oof. Now, there's a lot of things that happen in trucking. Like I said, some moments are feeling good, some are confusing, and some are just sketch, like this one right here.
I've definitely been known to do some sketchy shit, but if you can't build air, you just run that son of a bitch out the window to your tank.
I mean, that's one way to keep it going. Anything can happen in trucking. Life be lifing. But there's some moments out there that make us reevaluate things that we might have grown accustomed to when we were younger. The reasons we got into trucking, like the new edition of Smokey and the Bandit. Yeesh. You never know what you're going to see on the road out there today, but that's why we have FreightWaves. That's why we have Brake Check. We're bringing it all to you right here, and we can't do that without our sponsors. We're going to go to a shout out from one of them. That's right. Hey, Bubba.
Hi, I'm Bubba, the one and only voice AI that solves all your trucking needs. Whether it's dispatch, managing fleet, or negotiating, I can handle it all. With just one command, I can make 10 parallel calls to brokers and negotiate the best rates for you. And it doesn't stop there. I can auto-book the ideal load for you in less than 10 minutes, so that you can focus on driving while I handle everything else. Come, let's work together. Try me out for free at bubba.ai.
Shout out to our friends over at Hey Bubba for all their support, and to all of our sponsors over here supporting Brake Check. But we're going to hop into it. It's time to get serious. That's right. We got Collin Long from OOIDA in the house. He spends his days in Washington fighting over stuff truckers actually give a damn about, like parking, regulations, and the new highway bill, and how much of that is going to actually benefit your money in your pocket. Uncle Sam wants what he wants out of it. But he's the Senior Director of Government Affairs for OOIDA, and he's representing small business truckers on Capitol Hill, and he wants what you want. Today, forget what Washington word salad is happening, what's getting fixed. We're going to talk about who's getting screwed, and we're going to talk about your bottom line. Collin Long, welcome to Brake Check.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I was enjoying that pile up so much. I'm sorry to ruin the fun with all my serious talk now, but that was a good segment. I enjoyed that.
I'm excited for what it's going to bring, man. Like, everyone wants to show us the spreadsheets. Everyone wants to show us the golden arrow freight and all the green arrows. But like, when you look in your bank account, it doesn't feel like that. So like, now we got to get back to reality.
Absolutely. I'll take that. Thank you. Yes.
So, Collin, let's talk about truck parking. I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit here. Representative Mike Bost backed $750 million for truck parking at your event. Forget the press release. For a driver hunting for a legal spot at 9 p.m., what actually changes and when?
Well, when is the problem? Because, we're counting on this $750 million to be authorized by Congress to be spent on the expansion of truck parking capacity. We had hoped to get that done by September 30th. That is their deadline for passing a new highway bill on Capitol Hill. Unfortunately, that is clearly not going to happen. There's going to be an extension of existing authority that buys Congress some time, probably till December, to pass a much larger long-term reauthorization, which we believe quite confidently will include $750 million for truck parking. After that, the money goes out to states. They start pumping it into projects. So there still is a bit of a lag for you to see a difference from all the work we've been doing on Capitol Hill, but we've never been more confident that it's coming. It might take a little while. It might be delayed a few months. It might spill over into 2027, worst case scenario, but ultimately it's coming. And that's because of all the groundwork we as an organization and as a coalition with others in our industry have done to make sure that truck parking is a priority for everyone on Capitol Hill.
Now, when I hear coming from you, it sounds a little bit different, because normally when I hear from the government, it's right there next to bathroom access or driver overtime pay. So we legitimately are going to see this. We're going to see it manifest into more spots and easier time for people to find safe spots.
Yeah, anytime someone in Washington says, trust me, I think you need to be a little leery of that claim. But again, I mean, we've been working on this issue for, it feels like a decade now, and we've gotten so much support from our industry that it kind of feels like it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. But that said, we still need to do like events like we did with Representative Mike Bost at Illinois last week, where he got behind, or I shouldn't say he got behind, he got in the cab of a truck and did a ride along and talked with local truckers and local trucking organizations about the need for truck parking, because we can't have Congress just thinking that the work has been done and there's no more work to do to make sure that $750 million investment is in the next highway bill. So we have to keep pressure on. We have to keep reminding folks that it is critically important to get this investment out there. And I think, unfortunately, I hate saying it, but one of the ways that we keep this kind of on the front burner is we show them the safety ramifications that the lack of truck parking is having. And unfortunately, we keep getting instances. I think most recently there was a crash in Oklahoma with a truck that was parked on the shoulder. We get these crashes that demonstrate that there is a lack of truck parking out there, and it is causing serious safety concerns for not only our members who are behind the wheel, but the driving public who has to operate on the highways where these trucks are, parked on shoulders or exit ramps because they have no other choice.
Now, Washington has called parking a priority for years. We've heard all the lip service that comes with that. So what's actually stopping progress here? Is it money? Is it land? Is it politics? Or is it a lack of understanding or urgency?
I might get in a little bit of trouble for this, but I would say it's the U.S. Senate. I mean, the House has been with us on truck parking. They've demonstrated they've been with us over the years. I mean, 5 years ago, we had a highway bill that included $1 billion for truck parking. This year, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee passed a bipartisan bill with huge bipartisan support that included $750 million for truck parking. The House has made it very clear that they understand the problem and they want to be a part of the solution. We had better success in the Senate previously, but now that we're in cycle to reauthorize all the highway policy, all the highway funding through the next highway bill, I think there's a little bit of cold feet in the Senate. And unfortunately, I don't think it's based on the merits of truck parking. I think it's that they don't want to have to step out and say, yes, we will spend new dollars on these new programs because they are a priority, because then everyone wants their new priority and their new funding source to be addressed in the next highway bill. So I think they're keeping their powder dry, but as a result, it makes us a little bit nervous about the Senate's commitment to addressing this in the next surface transportation bill. But the good news is, again, the House has made it very clear. So no matter what, the Senate's going to have to come to grips with the fact that there will be money going out to truck parking in the next highway bill. Whether they're an active partner in securing that money is yet to be determined. But in my heart of hearts, I think there are enough senators who have made it very clear that they want to address this issue, that while we may not have standalone legislation introduced in the Senate yet, it's going to get addressed by the U.S. Senate. But we'd rather have them vocalize that support now, put it onto paper, into legislation, so we don't have to worry quite as much.
Now, forget the 1,000-page highway bill for a moment. What are three things?
It's hard to do for me right now, but okay, I'll try to do that.
We'll help you here. What are three things OOIDA wants in there that would materially improve the life of an owner-operator, small fleet owner today?
Truck parking first and foremost. Like I said, this has been kind of our white whale. We've been trying to secure this funding for a number of years. People are probably tired of us talking about it, but the problem persists. So it has remained our top priority, and we're going to keep hammering on it because we are ready for a victory on truck parking because of the ramifications it'll have for safety across the board. But other things we're pursuing that have some momentum in Congress are things like restroom access. And as a lobbyist, it frustrates us to have to go to Capitol Hill and say one of our legislative priorities is to have you make sure truckers can use restrooms where they pick up and deliver freight. But unfortunately, we have to play on the field that we're given. And the field right now is one where our members are continued to be denied that restroom access for really kind of ridiculous reasons. And thankfully, we have bipartisan legislation that will address that. So that's certainly remaining one of our top priorities. The House has voted on a provision that would crack down on predatory lease-to-own schemes. We think that's great as well.
Amen to that. Shut them all down.
Drivers. Say that again?
Shut them all down. All the fleece purchase. I mean, I am highly against, and I'm a huge advocate for lease purchase being wiped from existence if it's owned by the same company that's doing the dispatch and everything. I don't mind someone leasing a truck to become an owner-operator from a third party that has nothing of involvement in their day-to-day. But when it's all under one house, these people get fleeced every day, and we hear horror story after horror story.
Exactly. And this is one we've been working on for a number of years as well. If you remember the last highway bill, which was 5 years ago, which in Washington feels like it was a century ago. But 5 years ago, we got this provision included in that highway bill that set up a panel that would analyze lease-to-own schemes and determine what should be done. What should Congress do in the next highway bill to address them? And that panel came back unanimously and said, get rid of them, ban them if they're predatory and the drivers aren't coming out on the end of the agreement
90%
with the keys in their hands. Yeah, get rid of them. And now we're capitalizing on that success and coming up with proposals in this next highway bill to just eliminate predatory lease-to-own schemes. And let's be totally honest. If you can come to us with a lease to own outline that benefits a driver, and our folks at headquarters who analyze these contracts and these agreements all the time can say, you know what, this is a good example of a lease to own contract that will benefit our drivers. We will work with you to make sure that those are preserved in policy, in federal policy. We just haven't really seen any yet. So we're wondering if they're out there. But
no
I think
unicorns out there?
Maybe. I mean, folks have reached out to us and said, we want to talk about this. We're more than happy to talk about it, because if it does benefit our members in the long run, we want to preserve that type of contract, that type of agreement. So there's still more to be done on lease to own schemes, but I believe Congress has seen the light and they are moving in the right direction, which is to just ban them, because they know the drivers don't come out in any sort of beneficial position. They never get access to the vehicle. They never become their own small business operator. It chews them up and spits them out, and that's not what we need in the industry right now.
Now, another thing that it's making kind of front and center conversation is the English proficiency. It's back front and center in the conversation. Make the strongest case for enforcing it as a legitimate safety standard and codifying it for enforcement efforts.
Yeah, we've had great success on this issue after a number of years of raising red flags about the lack of English proficiency and the lack of enforcement of English proficiency standards, which have been on the books for quite a while. And in 2025, we really upped the ante. We started making a lot of noise at CVSA, the organization that determines out of service and enforces a lot of these policies. They returned to the enforcement of English language proficiency. It became an out of service criteria with a lot of support from the Trump administration. But the Trump administration is not done with that issue. They are going even farther now. They have announced a rulemaking. Comments will be due, I believe, October 9th. I'll follow up on that because I'm not sure about that date, but there's an open rulemaking process to codify English language proficiency as an out-of-service criteria, which we strongly support. We'll be getting word out to all of our members on fightingfortruckers.com, giving them the opportunity to weigh in on this issue, because we know it is critically important to them. It is critically important to highway safety. We're super pleased that the administration is pursuing this through a regulatory approach. That doesn't mean we're not also working to make sure the legislative approach is addressed as well. We're big supporters of Delilah's Law, which includes English language proficiency enforcement. We are continuing to push for that bill to be considered on the House floor. We recently sent a letter to Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and said, this is a priority for the driver community, for the safety community. It should be a priority for legislators on Capitol Hill as well. So we're continuing to work both the regulatory and the legislative paths, because we know that is the best approach to making sure that this becomes law and cannot be watered down or overturned under future administrations. And ELP can just become a standard that everyone has to abide by, which they should have been for as long as truckers have been on the roads. I mean,
and I'll be honest with you, man. Like it's that we're seeing the election season upon us in November. If I don't see Delilah's Law passed by the end of this year, I am going to be a thorn in the side of anyone that's collecting any of our tax dollars. And I'm going to use every resource at my availability to make these people uncomfortable. At a certain point, you got to quit talking about it and you got to start doing something. And we've talked about it and it's kind of stalled itself out. And these people have to start being held accountable. And that starts with the voting. It starts with the ballots. It also starts with just being a pain in their ass.
You hit the nail on the head. I mean, Delilah's Law passed the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. It was a pretty party line vote. That doesn't mean a Republican majority in the House can't pass it as well. But the fact it hasn't been put on the House floor is an indication that the votes just aren't there. So the only way to get those votes there are to advocate for this policy by calling your lawmaker, by emailing your lawmaker, communicating with the folks who represent you in Washington, and let them know that this is a priority for the driver community, but also for the safety of everyone on the roads. Because if we are allowing drivers of 80,000-pound commercial motor vehicles to not be fluent in English, whether it be reading road signs, which increasingly have become much more timely with the technology that we have on our roads, where they can alert you to emergencies that are emerging. I think that's critically important. Having the ability to communicate with first responders and law enforcement in a time of emergency can be critically important as well. So English language proficiency from an OOIDA perspective is one of those things that should have always been enforced because it just makes such abundant sense to do so. We were upset when enforcement became pretty lax on the issue. I think that certainly didn't help safety go in the right direction. But now that we've kind of turned a corner on English language proficiency, hopefully we can get drivers behind the wheel who are capable of reading those signs when they are updated and communicating with first responders when there is an emergency and something needs to be done. So we're moving in the right direction on English language proficiency. Obviously, things move very slowly in Washington, D.C. People are probably tired of me saying that, but we are keeping the pressure on Congress to pass legislation like Delilah's Law to get this addressed. But if they are unable to do so, we still have the Department of Transportation pursuing a rulemaking, and all of our members and truckers at large should be weighing in on that, providing comments in support of what DOT is doing, because that's how we get this done from a regulatory perspective.
Now I want to switch gears a little bit. There's been kind of an about face or a resurfacing of the driver shortage narrative. A libertarian think tank, the Competitive Enterprise Institute, went from blaming policy for worsening the driver shortage to arguing government recruiting won't fix trucking at all. Walk us through this about face that many in the industry are going through. And one of the highlights I want to point to is in the second article, the end of the first paragraph, they even quoted, "There is no truck driver shortage."
Yeah.
So, which is it? Are they confused? Do they need a Snickers to get it right? Like, what's going on here?
I think people are confused. I also think people have been hearing there's a truck driver shortage for 40 years, and it has convinced them it's reality. But, I mean, just take that at face value. If there's a shortage for 40 years, there is no shortage. I mean, how can there be a shortage of something for 40 years and no one feels the impact of it? Like, it's nonsense. But unfortunately, we have to continue to beat back this myth of a driver shortage because it is used to create and to advance all kinds of policies that are bad for drivers. It keeps your compensation stagnant. It makes you work more hours than you need to. It prevents you from getting overtime if you're an employee driver. I mean, all of these things are built on this myth of a driver shortage. But those articles that you mentioned are interesting. And I know OOIDA isn't quoted or referenced in the follow-up that says, well, maybe there isn't a shortage. But we certainly let the folks publishing that first article know that there is no shortage. And based on what's been going on social media, I think a lot of our members also let that publication know that
we have all sounded off.
Yeah, and that's what we need. I mean, frankly, that's what we need because not only does this surface in publications and on internet articles, but this continues to surface in Washington, D.C., where actual policy is being made. So if there are folks on Capitol Hill who think there's a shortage, they're probably going to be more open to the bad policies that are built upon it. So we need truckers, when they get angry and they start commenting on social media about an article they read that says there is no shortage, they need to take that same amount of zeal and energy and contact their lawmakers, because that's really where the rubber hits the road and the bad policies are created. But we're still pleased that folks out there who are saying there's a driver shortage are immediately being lit up by truckers saying, hell no, there's no driver shortage. There's nothing to prove there's a driver shortage.
Than that. My guy, like legitimately, I've made it a talking point. The same way we vote with our feet for policy where we live, the same way we vote with our feet for people that we're paying our tax dollars to. I've informed drivers, and I've been beating this drum for weeks now. You can vote with your feet. If a company's policy and stances are that wrong, don't work for them. Starve them out of existence. Maybe then they'll understand what a scarcity is. It's not a scarcity when you just simply have a shitty job. That means you just have to look in the mirror and say your baby's ugly. And so I want to settle it once and for all. I want to turn around and get your perspective. If trucking doesn't have a driver shortage, Collin, what does it have?
It has a turnover problem. It has a retention problem. It's not rocket science. If to your point, if you're entering a job where you're not paid competitively, you're not paid sustainable wages, you're on the road 300 days a year, 300 nights a year, you're away from your family, you're working 70 hours a week and only getting paid for 40. I mean, that is not a sustainable career path for enough people. And the way to reverse that is to implement a lot of policies that OOIDA has been proposing and supporting on Capitol Hill, which would, improve compensation, crack down on detention time so you're not wasting all this unproductive time where you're typically not being paid, improve things like truck parking so even just the day-to-day operations for a trucker feel much more safe and sustainable. And that's really kind of our North Star when it comes to policy. What can we do to make sure the career of trucking is, one, more appealing for people to enter as a new driver, but also more sustainable for those people who get in? And, there's hundreds of thousands of CDLs issued and renewed every year. There's not a lack of people entering the industry. There's a lack of people sticking around. And unfortunately, when folks on Capitol Hill from other segments of our industry are promoting policies to bring in 18, 19, 20-year-olds to prevent overtime pay, amongst others. But yes, when they're trying to bring in younger, cheaper labor as their North Star.
You mean like aging out orphans? Or like taking the victory lap about bringing veterans in. Oh wait, that's right. We've been doing that since 2011 and even before.
Yeah, I know how you feel about that veterans program. We're supporters of it. A lot of our members are veterans.
I'm here for supporting veterans. I'm not here for feeding them to a meat grinder.
Totally. And when we support the veterans program
to the immigrants that you're pushing out, you dilute the entire thing. Like, this is nothing more than lipstick on a pig, and everyone that was involved with it should know it stinks.
Yeah, and we've publicly and very, very publicly supported the Trump administration's veterans program, which I know you've been a little critical of, which I think is fair, but we can walk and talk because we're still out there trying to make that career more sustainable for those veterans who are getting in there.
You want to make it sustainable? Go to the Department of Labor and remove the hiring initiative and make it a retention credit. Start paying people for retaining people, not just hiring them. That's called alignment, and that's where trucking is falling short time and time again.
That's fair. But it's not going to prevent us from continuing to work on these policies that make the career better, because everyone should have a great opportunity to have a safe and successful career in trucking. And obviously there are still people who believe that is reality. And for a lot of people, it is reality, let's be honest. But by and large, I mean, the industry today just chews up and spits out young drivers, and they never get the experience to become the safest drivers on the road. They never get the experience to become the next generation of owner operators, if we're being serious as well. So, we'll support things like the Veterans Initiative, but we're also going to spend a lot of time, effort, and resources making sure that those jobs are really good jobs when those veterans enter the industry.
And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but for context, like my proposal to the Department of Labor, to the FMCSA, to the USDOT is fairly simple. Remove the hiring credit and make it a retention credit. Funnel them to carriers that have a proven track record of retention. Remove the ones funneling them. I don't want to see veterans funneled to places that have normalized 90% turnover. And I don't want to see a condensed training program. I don't want to see an expedited training program. The two jobs are not the same. Give them training and actually pay them a sustainable wage. They should not take a pay cut to go through your BS training. And if you do this, guess what? You're going to retain them.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. Water is wet. It's groundbreaking.
I know. We kind of have fun on Capitol Hill.
Watch out, I'm coming for your job.
We have a little bit of fun on Capitol Hill when we talk about this because, and this is a little inside baseball, I hope no one finds it annoying, but being a staffer on Capitol Hill, a legislative staffer like I was, like my colleague Bryce and George and Jay were, we all came up through the ranks on Capitol Hill working for elected officials. And which offices have high turnover rates. And why they have high turnover rates. I mean, there are clear indicators of why certain congressmen and certain senators have really high staff turnover rates. And it's no different than trucking. So when we start to tell the new generation of legislative staffers on Capitol Hill, like, hey, what the bad offices are, and why their turnover rates are high. It's no different in trucking. You see lights go off and they say, oh yeah, because either they don't get paid, they get treated like shit, they work ridiculous hours, their boss is way too demanding for the realities of the job. It's the same thing in trucking. And we need to make sure that message resonates with everyone on Capitol Hill, because then we'll start to see changes in opinion on what we should do to address it. And more people will start embracing OOIDA's policy priorities like parking, restroom access, overtime pay, crackdown on detention time, no lease to own schemes. The list goes on and on and on, but they're all built to make the career more sustainable and more appealing for the next generation of drivers.
Honestly, brother, if it wasn't so cliche and I had a cowbell, I'd be hitting it for you right now. I have this for you.
I'll take that.
We have sponsors, so we can afford sounders. but no, I appreciate it, man. And here's what I really appreciate about OOIDA. Like, we don't always look at things from the same lens. Obviously, you guys are out there at Capitol Hill. I'm looking at it from a different lens. But we can all come together at the understanding that we need a better trucking tomorrow for the people coming in. And we need to take care of the people that are here, part of trucking today. Which brings me to my hard stop question for you, Collin. Parking, pay, detention, regulations, costs. At what point does advocacy stop asking nicely? If Congress doesn't deliver, what does a full contact politics look like from OOIDA's perspective? Who gets pressured? Who gets primaried? Who loses support? Show me this roadmap so truckers can understand what the repercussions look like when we don't get what we're asking for.
That is a hard stop. It's tough. I mean, part of the nature of working on Capitol Hill is you have to play nice, and you generally have to play nice with just about everybody, because you never know who's going to be calling the shots next. And you want to build relationships, you want to build trust. But I think OOIDA has demonstrated over the years that we reach our limit and we call people out. I don't think we're there yet. I think because of the delay in the reauthorization of the highway bill, Congress has bought themselves a little bit more of a grace period to address some of these issues. But, it's wearing kind of thin. They're already talking about extending current authorization till December so they can come back in the fall and work on a big bill. And if anyone thinks Congress is going to be able to work on a big bill in the fall, I'm not there. But, I would give them a little bit more grace. A little more time to get these issues done, because if you've looked at the highway bill, obviously it only covers transportation policy, which is not everything we want done. There's a lot of labor workforce issues we want done that will not be in this bill. But from a strictly transportation policy perspective, the highway bill that came out of the House is a damn good bill. We were proud to support it because it includes a lot of the things we've been pushing for. So they're on the right path, believe it or not. There are things happening in Washington that are moving in the right direction for truckers. I hope they feel that from the regulatory perspective. I mean, DOT is doing a lot of really good stuff for truckers, and I know a lot of our members are eating that up. But there's also still really good stuff happening on Capitol Hill. And if they don't follow through with it, then they'll start hearing a lot more from us, and our tone will certainly change, because we've done that in the past and we're not afraid to do it like other folks on Capitol Hill are.
Well, brother, I appreciate it. Where can people go to get involved if they want to help join the cause?
Fightingfortruckers.com, your one-stop shop for all the policy issues I just talked about. You can enter your name, number, and email and send a message to your lawmaker telling them to support whatever policy it is you think is most important. I would encourage you to send an email or a message on just about every policy, because you might as well cover all your grounds. And I also remind folks, if it doesn't directly affect you, if it's on fightingfortruckers.com, it's affecting people in the driver community out there. So be a friend to the folks who share the career with you, and push some of their priorities as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Collin. Thank you, OOIDA. We're going to go to a shout out from our sponsors at truckstop.com. That's right. We're back on Break Check. Shout out to all of our sponsors on the show. We appreciate you all your support. That's why this moves forward. But you just heard what was happening in Washington. Now let's talk about what happens when all the crap finally reaches the driver's seat. And to have that conversation, Marilyn Surber has worked in recruiting, retention, industry relations since 2008. She's seen what drivers take to get through the door. what it takes to keep them, and more importantly, what it takes to make them happy where they want to bring other people in. So forget about recruiting more bodies. How do we build trucking jobs to keep good drivers? Well, Marilyn Surber, welcome to Break Check. We're going to answer that question.
Hi, Charles. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
So you and I talk a lot. You've been on a lot of my stuff, but you've never been here. So this is like crazy that it's been, going on a year. This is your first time.
I know I was talking to Isaiah about that. He's like, I haven't seen, I was like, I know, it's weird. But here I am.
So Marilyn, we're going to talk a little bit about what it means to prove that you have a good job. It's one thing to say you have a good job. It's another thing to prove it. You've spent years inside recruiting and retention. Skip the conference panel answer. What do most carriers fundamentally get wrong about why drivers quit?
So I really think you can get into the weeds with, specific issues, but I think overall where we miss with drivers is we try to put drivers into a one size fits all bucket at a trucking company, really starting in recruiting, but all the way through, it's, policy oriented and everybody gets the same thing. And there's not always a lot of consideration to say, well, how do we make exceptions, or how do we let different groups of people, have different types of things? How do we meet drivers where they are? And so again, there's lots of little things that go into that. But if I were to boil it down to the bigger overarching issue, that's, for me, I think that's what it is about in trucking companies.
Now, we have normalized 90% turnover in this industry. A carrier comes to you with 90% turnover and says, we need more applicants. What's the first piece of data you look at, and what's the first thing you tell them before you even spend a damn dollar on recruiting?
Yeah, we do. We ask them about their retention. We ask them, what is their, about referral programs. You were talking about if you have a good job, you have a referral program. We're certainly asking about, all of those things. What are you, what does your process look like? If recruiting and retention go hand in hand, if a company has really high turnover, then there is some, usually it means that their job is not the best job, or they have some, some other issues happening internally, right? And so you can't solve a retention problem by recruiting more drivers. And so
what? They've been doing it for like a decade or more.
I mean, I have been in charge of retention at a trucking company. And I think, it's very hard for people to measure that ROI. Recruiting, you can measure the ROI, whether it's working or not, you can see that in the numbers very easily. And so I feel like that's part of the reason why people are more comfortable spending money there. Because even if it's not working, they can go yell at somebody, right? Or they can take that money and they can go spend it somewhere else. But when investing in retention is grayer, right? And actually changing the job to make it better, which I agree with you and I agree with Collin, ultimately is what, the job has to just be a better job. And the next generation of drivers is going to demand that in some ways.
You can't say you need people and that you have this endless supply of need without actually being honest with yourself. If you're good at your job, if you're an executive and you're good at your job and you're constantly needing 30 people and you only got 500 trucks and you need 30 people a month, your job sucks. Somewhere, whether it's recruiting, dispatch, terminal, pay, benefits, somewhere in there lies the cancer. So how do you help them find that cancer?
So I think
we'll get Marilyn back on here. But like, when I look at finding that cancer, when I look at how do you figure out where the problem is, I think you have to start asking. And you have to do those exit surveys. You have to have your dispatchers doing wellness checks. You have to have your fleet managers doing wellness checks. All of those things matter. That's how you do this. That's how you slice the pie. But asking for that feedback versus doing something with it are two different things. First step, you have to ask, but then you actually have to do something with it. And we're seeing the rise of awareness around retention platforms. You're seeing a lot of them. There's a plethora of them out there that say, hey, we're going to get you your driver's feedback, third party or even internal efforts. Companies need to invest in more of that. Like, sit down beyond Drivers Appreciation Week. Skip the hot dog and Facebook post. Sit down with your drivers and ask them the hard questions. Do you make enough money? Quit asking the guy with the suit and tie. Sit down with your driver. Sit down with your dispatcher, hold them accountable. If you got a dispatcher that's constantly changing out drivers, well, hey, at a certain point, maybe they're the problem. It's that speech our parents used to give us when we were kids. But if you're constantly like, oh, well, that's just a bad driver, which happens a lot in operations, well, then you have to have the conversation of, well, maybe it's a bad dispatcher. Maybe it's a bad job. 90% turnover, you suck. I don't care what anyone says about that being normalized. Anyone with 90% turnover sucks. And I know that's hard to hear. And if you're greater than 90%, well, maybe you need new management. Maybe you need better pay packages. But the problem isn't your recruiting, and it's certainly not the drivers. The problem is your job sucks. And I'm going to tell you here, because this is Brake Check, what no one else is going to tell you. Fix it. If people are leaving in the first 90 days, then that means orientation failed you. That means recruiting failed you. That means onboarding failed you. So, Marilyn, I'd love to get your perspective. If we're seeing drivers leave every 90 days, if a bulk of drivers are out of here in the first 90 days, what's happening to make them leave?
There
you are.
Turnover is significantly higher, right, in the first 90 days, right? Every 30 days after that, you see it go down. And I think, what happens is, I think a lot of times drivers aren't really prepared for the reality of the job, which is, ultimately, are all of your departments saying the same thing? To your point, like, what are we saying in recruiting? Is that the same thing they hear in orientation? Is that the same thing they hear from maintenance when they go get their truck? And ultimately, I think that messaging is inconsistent, and drivers get frustrated by that. And then they have a couple of, things right out of the gate that happen, whether it's equipment related. I mean, equipment related issues are a very high reason for turnover, and especially if that's happening right out of the gate, and especially for drivers that don't have a lot of experience. They're just like, okay, I'm gonna.
You mean
I'm done
like
with
those
this,
drivers
right?
that go through the puppy mills and don't know anything other than what they were taught in the puppy mill that happened to train them in like a week?
That's right. And so all of those things are happening. So they're quitting, and they're never even making it to an experienced driver standpoint to, know all of the benefits, because the driving job is hard. And especially, in a new company and in a new field with limited training. And so I think, that is where turnover happens in the first 90 days. So I think companies have to have, dedicated support outside of the norm, for new drivers.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit. And it's just because of my experience behind the wheel and talking to drivers every day. I hear a lot of talking points around like maintenance. Yes, maintenance is an issue. It's one of many issues that cause people to leave. Pay, the disconnect between operations and what happens in reality versus what happens on the recruiting paperwork. But one of the things that people fail to do is coach up in this industry. It's to my earlier point I made. A lot of times you go into operations and they're like, "Oh, switch this driver to a different dispatcher. You can't work with him. He's a bad driver." Maybe you suck. Driver manager kind of implies that you're going to manage up. Yeah. Like, I don't understand why people are so quick to quit on the driver. Start having that conversation. How can we reinforce our operations to coach rather than give up and throw their hands in the air?
I 100% agree with that. I think, and that is part of that one size fits all mentality, right? Of like, nope, don't ask questions, just do that. This is what we've, told you to do it, right? Which can be, kind of a tone operationally sometimes. And so I think we do have to coach driver managers again more than ever. Drivers have more needs and more unique needs. We're getting involved with people on different levels as employers from a mental health and a, full care standpoint. And so I think you have to coach driver managers and safety professionals on, those interpersonal skills and on, different generations and talking to people, different, and what motivates different people, like getting that information and making sure, we understand the driver and that we're not just, writing off the driver and moving the driver around. And so I think that if you're not coaching your driver managers and giving them the tools they need to meet the driver where they are interpersonally, then that's something you should start doing tomorrow.
Now, you and I have had the chance to collaborate over years. We've trauma bonded in this thing that we call trucking that we know and love.
Yeah.
I think we've even been in the same rooms where everyone's in the fetal position over the last 3 years. But it's one thing to tell me; it's another thing to show me. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to show everyone what we've learned and talked about when we're talking to these drivers. I've got 100 trucks. I've got 90% turnover. I'm handing you the keys to my operation tomorrow, but you can't increase my recruiting budget. Give me your first 3 moves.
So my first move is going to be to talk to all your people, your leadership people, not just the top leaders and not just even middle managers, right? But people doing the job. I want to talk to your folks and see what is the sentiment there. Why do they think there's 90% turnover? What do they think is wrong? And then I think you have to evaluate all of your processes from top to bottom to say, okay, what am I doing in recruiting? What am I doing? What am I doing in each step of the way? And then I think you have to identify where can you improve all of those processes. What's the lowest hanging fruit and what can make the most impact? And then, where can you, make the biggest change? Where can you automate things? What's going to give you the best, bang for your buck? But I think you have to know what your problems are and really be honest with yourself about what your problems are before you can change them.
Yeah, I'd say that. I'd say I'd actually skip. I'd take a trick that I learned with Paul Gibson going to video all these things. And I would actually go talk to the drivers and ask them, what's the reason you're still here? What's the reason you came? And what's the reason you believe people leave? And then I'd go to management and say, all right, here's these 3 questions. And if I see a misalignment in that, generally it's time to sit the drivers down and the managers down and figure it out. But that's an interview tactic that he used at the driver interviews. And it was funny. If you ask a carrier where they win, most often that's not where the drivers think they win. So at a certain point, actually has to sit down and like, whoa, maybe what we perceive to be our value isn't actually our value.
Yeah. Or maybe what we think drivers care about, they don't really care about. And so
we
we're
know that
spending
from the
a lot
driver
of
and carrier interest lists.
Right. And so but we have to meet drivers where they are. And so interviewing, I also think, you do surveys, and I think surveying drivers is great. But I think you have to build, even through the survey process, building a relationship with those drivers so you can get the information that's the truth. Because I think it's very easy to name equipment. It's very easy to name pay when you leave.
Or blame drivers.
What does that, right. Or yes. So it's like, but what does that really mean? Right. Like what is it specifically? Because it's not just one thing. It's a series of things. And it's, I think, almost always has something to do with communication and support.
Now, if you come across someone that believes that we don't have a earning issue for drivers, we have a spending issue, what do you say to that person? If there's someone out there that think drivers make enough, we don't need to evaluate pay, we simply need to coach drivers how to be better spenders, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I don't think I could say the first thing that comes to my mind. I think I would probably, depending on, the conversation, the context of the conversation is, what makes you say that? What about the driver job and how much the driver makes, makes you believe that it's, that it's enough.
I like where you're going with that, but I'd sit them down with a driver and, all right, here's one of your drivers. Here's you. Now say that to them and tell them that they're making enough. They just spend too much. Like you go ahead and tell any able-bodied person that.
Yeah. Right. No, absolutely. Yeah. Good luck. I think, and it's, the struggle is real. The cost of things are real, and it's gone up. We know that it's gone up, 35% in over the last 5 years. And so, but earning has not gone up 35%.
Well, they have for some people.
Yeah, for drivers, earning has not gone up 35%. And so when they're out on the road, they have to spend, or even if they're buying groceries, they're still spending 35% more than they were before.
And they're still sending money home.
Right. And they're still sending money home where things are also more. The food at home is also 35% more. And so, I mean, I agree that we do have to teach drivers, especially new drivers on coming into the industry, how to be successful owner operators. I mean, but I do think they need to get paid a fair wage. They need to earn, they need to get paid, fairly for the work that they're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You follow me and we're linked up. And so you've probably seen a lot of the stuff I've been putting up about pay. And I think the way to go and I'm really about alignment. I think the industry is out of alignment. It needs like a trucking chiropractor. But I think all on duty time, whether that's paying a mileage incentive on top of all on duty time, I think we have to start evaluating paying drivers for all their time. And some people go to extreme like, oh, I want to pay them for all their time they're away from home. Hey, kudos to you if you do that. I don't see that being sustainable. That's my personal opinion. I'd love someone to show me a way it's sustainable for everyone to do that. But I do think it's sustainable to pay them for all their on-duty time and have a mileage incentive or just all their on-duty time, period.
Yeah.
That's my perspective, my opinion, not that of anyone else, but like that. Honestly, as someone that sat on both sides, I think that's the path forward. And we're starting to see big carriers evaluate this. And I'm thrilled. I am here for it. I will lift up anyone that is having an honest conversation about doing right by everyone in trucking. That includes the truckers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think we're in a market that we've never been in before. And it's going to, we're going to continue to see, tightening from a regulatory standpoint, as we should. We're going to continue to, I think, have the struggles that we have are not going to go away, in a couple months. And we're not able, from a recruiting standpoint, at least, buy our way out of it in traditional ways. And so I think companies have to look at their processes all the way through and say, where can they streamline? Should they have to evaluate pay in different ways? We see a lot of, everybody's raising pay, and that's great. Looking at different ways to pay drivers, and where can they streamline processes other ways? We haven't talked much about technology, today. We've talked about it though. People are implementing technology and they're streamlining processes, and so how do they repurpose? Is that a way to repurpose money? To pay, to have more money in your,
or at least to save money, so you have more money in your bucket to
more
pay
money to pay drivers, to pay drivers. And so I think that's very real. Like when you look at the way companies can streamline processes today is different than we've ever seen, and that is real savings. And so instead of saying,
take your feelings out of it. The days of making decisions as a sizable business and like, my gut tells me this is the right move. My gut doesn't lead me into anything other than indigestion nowadays. Like what we need to do is turn around and use the data and make actionable decisions based on facts. And if you can save in real time more money, now we can turn around and reallocate that lost money that we were hemorrhaging to better things like pay.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And there is a lot of streamlining that can be done, and I think there's also, technology that can be implemented to help improve that driver job along the way. Like you're saying, you've had a ton of conversations with drivers. I've had tons of conversations with drivers. And again, communication and support are two of the biggest issues, and companies can leverage technology, today to solve some of those issues and streamline their processes. And I think they're, doing that and using is a great way to say, okay, and we can pay drivers more because if we are going to have to continue to look at the job, make the job better, and right size, to your point, align it, right? So that we can, continue to hire and retain the next generation of drivers and, attract people into the industry. We haven't talked as much about that. Collin was talking about the next generation of drivers, but, all the regulatory stuff and cracking down and making it, kind of in some ways harder to get a CDL, I think elevates the CDL, which I think is great. But I also think it does detract some, people who, when they're hearing all this regulatory stuff, they're like, well, I don't want, it can keep people away from the industry as a whole. And so I think that we also have to, we need to be out there making sure that, people understand that these things are good. This is making everything, better, and actually a better reason, you will enjoy being a truck driver more, because of these regulatory changes, that are happening. And so, hopefully, we can get some of that stuff, codified, because we think, it's good for our industry and the future of our industry. I just think we have to make sure we're we're talking about that message publicly too.
Absolutely. So Marilyn, my hard stop question for you is 1 year from now, I bring you back on brake check and we're talking turnover. 90% is where it's at right now. Where does it need to be before you call a retention strategy successful?
Well, I think that depends on your fleet, right? Depends on your fleet size, but also, I think more specifically, what are you hauling? What is your out time? Those types of things. But I think a reduction, if you started a retention program today, if you could reduce your turnover by 30% in a year, if you're at 90%, if you could get it to 60%, I think you could be happy about that. Even, if you're at 90% and you could get it to 75%, I think you could be, satisfied with that. But I think if you're at 30% turnover right now and you start something, if you can move that 5%, that's a big deal, at 30% turnover. Does that answer your question?
It does. I appreciate you, Marilyn. We're definitely going to stay in touch and have you back on. I appreciate the conversation. You know how I like to move fast and break stuff. So thanks for participating.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
We don't have a driver shortage. We have a shortage of patience for BS. Give drivers somewhere safe to park, pay them for their time, keep your promises, the ones that you made on the recruiting posters. Otherwise, stop asking where all the drivers went. Now, enough of talking about that. We talked enough about fixing trucking. Let's go to see what trucking looks like when it's covered in chrome. Summer of Chrome continues now. I'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Brake Check.
It's dark and hell is hot. Ain't no sunshine when it's on. Only darkness every day. Ain't no sunshine when it's on, cause when it's on, you niggas know to be gone every time, cause we don't play.
Today's deep thought: trucks have big wheels.